Good morning. Welcome to Committee on Economic Development. It is Wednesday, February the 10th, 9:30 a.m. First up on the agenda today, I forgot to say, 2-minute testimony, and where possible, professional testifiers, please do stand on your testimony. Beginning our agenda today, we have HB 383 relating to a state poker commission. First up, we have Doe Tax with comments.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Ted Shiraishi for the Department of Taxation, and we stand on our written testimony providing comments.
Thank you very much. Next, we have DCCA with comments. Next, we have BNF with comments. Next, we have Department of the Prosecuting Attorney in opposition.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Deputy Prosecutor Tricia Nakamatsu on behalf of the Honolulu Prosecuting Attorney's Office. We will stand on a written testimony in strong opposition.
Thank you very much. Next, we have DBED in opposition. Next, we have HPD in opposition. Next, we have Tax Foundation of Hawaii, Tom Yamachika with comments.
Thank you, Chair. Tom Yamachika from Tax Foundation. Our comments are primarily focused on the effects of the Indian Gaming Regulatory Act. So as to educate the members on what may happen if we allow gambling in Hawaii. There are certain things we would not be able to stop, and this is one of them. I'd be happy to answer questions.
Next, we have Jamil Newworth, an individual, in support. Members' questions. Vice Chair.
For Tax Foundation. Tom,
Yes, sir.
Last Friday you had the same testimony and the department had responded that it is basically impossible for your testimony to be true. Do you have a response to that?
Yes, sir. I did look at the regulations, and this is addressed on the second page, first paragraph of my testimony. Under the Code of Federal Regulations sections, the state does have an opportunity to respond to and object to any acquisitions, but there is no veto power. The Secretary of the Interior will make the final call.
Thank you.
Members' questions? Seeing none, next we have HB 772 relating to casino gaming. First up, we have Doe Tax with comments.
Good morning again, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Doe Tax stands on its written testimony providing comments.
Thanks very much. Next, we have the Office of the Auditor with comments. Next, we have BNF with comments. Next, we have Department of the Prosecuting Attorney in opposition.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Deputy Prosecutor Tricia Nakamatsu on behalf of the Honolulu Prosecuting Attorney's Office. We will stand on a written testimony in strong opposition.
Thank you very much. Next, we have DBED in opposition. Next, we have HPD in opposition. And OIP with comments. Next, we have the Tax Foundation of Hawaii with comments.
Thank you, Chair. Tom Yamachika from Tax Foundation. Basically, our informational testimony is the same as in the previous bill.
Thank you very much. Next, we have a number of individuals in opposition. Members' questions. Vice Chair.
I guess not really a question, but a request that if this bill moves forward, that 80% of all proceeds goes to the Department of Hawaiian Oil Lands. Thanks.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Very reasonable request. Next up, members, any more questions or comments? Next up, we have HB 736 relating to sports betting. First up, we have Department of the Prosecuting Attorney in opposition.
And again, good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Deputy Prosecutor Tricia Nakamatsu on behalf of the Honolulu Prosecuting Attorney's Office. We will stand on a written testimony in strong opposition.
Thank you very much. Next, we have DBED in opposition. Next, we have HPD in opposition. And today we have Rebecca London from DraftKings in support. Rebecca, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Please go ahead.
Would you like me to deliver my full testimony now?
Whatever you feel is appropriate.
Sure, yes, thank you. Chair Quinlan and Vice Chair Holt and members of the committee, I thank you for your time this morning. My name is Rebecca London, and I'm here to provide testimony for DraftKings in support of HB 736. We appreciate the opportunity to participate today and to discuss the importance of Hawaii embracing a competitive, fully mobile sports wagering market. DraftKings is a digital sports entertainment and gaming company created to fuel the competitive spirit of sports fans with products that range across daily fantasy, regulated gaming, and digital media. DraftKings Sportsbook is live with mobile and/or retail sports betting operations in 14 states. You have a copy of my full written testimony, so I'll keep my remarks short. It's important to recognize that sports wagering is already taking place in Hawaii on a massive scale, with an estimated 276,000 people betting over $669 million in illegal wagers each year. Nearly all the sports wagers in Hawaii are placed online through websites in the robust illegal market. To date, 21 states have legalized sports betting and 14 have authorized mobile sports betting, allowing customers to place bets conveniently from their mobile phones and other devices. To create an effective legal market, legal operators must be able to compete with pricing from illegal sports books that do not face the same taxation and regulatory costs. Barriers to market entry, such as high taxes and fees, cut into an operator's profit and reduce their ability to offer competitive pricing. On that note, we suggest that the current license fee of $30 million for the pilot program is enough to deter regulated operators from entering the market. A pilot program in the state of Hawaii is well-regulated and encourages residents of Hawaii and tourists alike to participate.
Oh, I'm sorry. Could you please just kind of wrap it up? Thank you very much. Next up, we have Ellen Godby Carson, an individual in opposition. Members, questions? Please, Rep. Okimoto.
Thank you, Chair. This question is, I think I'm going to ask it to both the prosecuting attorney as well as the DBIT. And this is similar to the previous two bills that we have seen. I'm kind of, it's the testimony that you guys have shared. Lead reference or research based on the social impacts that gambling or casinos or gambling type of behavior can bring to our community and society. And I've heard in other situations where this type of research is not true. Can you speak to that? Because I see that your testimony has the social impact and the negative impacts it can have on society and in crime. But then I hear opposing sides to that.
As with most things, Representative, it does appear that there are differing opinions at times. We feel that there is strong evidence and a number of studies that show that the crime rates do increase. Certainly, problem gambling becomes more prevalent. That seems pretty straight across the board. And problem gambling is closely correlated with increased domestic violence, alcoholism, various types of other crimes. We did note also that, I suppose that's it. We actually picked what we felt were very credible sources, that the studies were numerous and consistent enough in that sense that they need to be considered very carefully. Because once you open this, I suppose, Pandora's box to legalize commercial gambling. Now, this is very different from social gambling, which we all know already exists here. You have your betting pools at Super Bowl parties. You have poker night with the guys or women. And those are already legal as long as there's no house. But once you introduce legalized commercialized gambling, the evidence or the studies are very clear that gambling is going to increase a great deal exponentially. Even though people might say, oh, illegal gambling is already occurring now, that is true. And there are enforcement mechanisms in place to try to quell that and to make sure that it doesn't get out of hand. It doesn't get to the point where we have organized crime and things like that getting out of control. We feel very strongly that once you legalize it, it will be way worse. It will be much, much more prevalent. And there's just no way that you can stop that once you legalize commercialized gambling.
Thank you. So that there's a direct correlation in your. Was there anybody from HPD on the Zoom meeting? No? Okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Members, questions? If not, I have a question for the prosecuting attorney's office. You've talked a little bit about enforcement mechanisms, and you heard the testimony from DraftKings that there are a number of people gambling X amount of dollars here in the state. What sort of enforcement mechanisms do we have in place for this online sports betting that is currently occurring in the state to the tune of $600 million?
I can't speak to there being $200 to $600 million coming out of the state for sports betting. That would be something more for HPD or perhaps even the federal law enforcement. I can check on numbers as far as how many cases we get. I don't think that that's, well, I can check. It might require some hand counting on our part.
But I mean, to the best of your knowledge, is there any sort of enforcement on the federal or state or local level for online sports betting? Has anyone attempted to tackle this issue?
I'm sorry, Chair, I would have to look into that. That is the investigation side of things is typically
the answer
something
is
we leave to.
no, there isn't really any enforcement. I don't think there is any attempts on the state level or the county level here in Hawaii to enforce against illegal online sports betting.
And like I said, I can look into it further if you like.
Do you folks have any, I mean, again, I'm just basing this off of, what the DraftKings testimony. So I don't know if it's true or not, but it sounds about right. If we're a state of 1.5 million people, about 300,000 sports gamblers. I mean, just based off of, folks I know in my life, that seems like a reasonable number. Do you think that that would increase significantly if we were to legalize either through, mobile or your desktop computer sports gambling in the state of Hawaii?
And again, I can't speak to the number of sports bettors that currently exist. I don't know if there's a differentiation between, again, people who have a Super Bowl betting pool and people who are actually online gaming or online betting on sports currently. 300,000 actually sounds like a very large number. That would be 1 in 5 or 1 in 4 people in the state doing it. And I mean, if it just seems like an inflated number. I'm not sure what that's based on, unless that's the actual number of customers that DraftKings has who reside in Hawaii. Then of course, then they would be able to speak to those numbers. Otherwise, it's hard to say what those numbers are based on, and they just seem very large.
Can you
larger than is realistic?
Can you remember in your time as a prosecutor ever having prosecuted somebody for bookmaking?
Personally, no, but I imagine our department has done that.
Roughly
Again, I can look up.
In a year might be prosecuted for bookmaking? Ballpark.
No ballpark figure, but I will get back to the chair with that bookmaking and sports betting.
DraftKings, if you're still on the line, how did you come up with those figures of X amount of gamblers and X amount of dollars gambled, wagered?
Absolutely, I'd be happy to answer that. That was based on a study done by the American Gaming Association and the University of Oxford. And so, we have those estimates for all 50 states.
Okay. Members, any questions? Rep. Onishi.
Yes, for DraftKings. So that testimony, almost 276,000 people, is that online sports betting only, or like a survey of all kinds of sports betting?
So that is a measure of illegal sports wagering. So it doesn't take into account the social sort of betting. And where we get that does include illegal use of, what's known as your traditional bookmaker, the guy maybe at your local bar that is hosting, that is taking wagers. But what we have found is that there are increasingly sophisticated ways for residents of Hawaii and of other states that they can go online and use a website and may not even be aware that what they're doing is illegal. These websites are based in other countries and have no consumer protections, but they are so sophisticated. If you do a simple internet search, Hawaii internet gaming, you can be led to these illegal sites and place a wager, and many residents of Hawaii may not know that what they're doing is illegal because the websites are so sophisticated.
So how does DraftKings ensure that residents from states that do not have online sports betting they don't go to your site and make wagers?
Sure, thanks for that question. So we have a number of systems in place to verify that our users are in a state that has legalized sports wagering, as well as identity checks, so that we make sure that no underage users are placing wagers. For example, so I'm in Maine and we don't have legal sports wagering. I can go to the DraftKings Sportsbook website to look around, but if I try to place a wager, a notification will pop up that says, it looks like you're not in a state with legal sports wagering. And we do that through a number of ways, but in particular, if you're on your phone, we do it through geolocation services and IP address.
Okay, thank you. I have a follow-up for the prosecutor. So the city and county of Honolulu prosecutor, I guess another way to put Chair's question is, how many actual online sports betting prosecutions or cases have come before the Honolulu prosecutor's office?
I'm sorry, Representative, are you reposing the question? I will get those numbers, and specifically in the fashion that you
Well, he
asked.
asked a question about enforcement, right? Of online betting being illegal.
Yes.
And you said that you don't know of any enforcement, or, well, you're not aware, I guess, of.
I'm not personally, yes,
But if
familiar.
people were enforcing, then those cases would come before you guys, right, for prosecution.
If it's at the state or county level, yes.
Yeah, so the answer would be, if there's no cases before you, then there's no enforcement, correct?
If there were no cases, then I can't say that no enforcement is being attempted, but it would mean that we have no cases that we felt could be proven beyond a reasonable doubt.
Well, it would still be a case, right? You'd have to have dismissed them.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry, if no charges were brought, but then yes, if we would have a record of it, if something was brought to us and we
Right. Right,
assessed
exactly.
it.
But if there are none, that would
It would
correlate
appear
to
that,
no enforcement, right?
yes.
Okay,
Um,
thank you. I just wanted that to be clarified. Thank you, Chair.
Members, any more questions? No? If not, we will move on to the next bill. House Bill 1041, relating to conformity of the Internal Revenue Code. First, the Department of Taxation,
Good morning, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Tetsuya Ishii for the Department of Taxation, and we stand on our written testimony in strong support.
Thanks, Ted. Tax Foundation, Tom?
Thank you, Chair. This is the department's annual revenue code conformity bill. It is typically passed every year, so there's nothing unusual about this one.
Members' questions? Seeing none, moving on to HB 1049. First up, we have DOTAX in support.
Good morning again, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. DOTAX stands on its written testimony in strong support.
And we have Tom Yamachika with comments. Go ahead, Tom.
Thank you, Chair. We agree that this bill is technical corrections and deletion of obsolete provisions.
Alrighty, thank you very much. Next up, we have HB 1044. First up, we have DOTAX in support.
The Department of Taxation stands on its written testimony in support, Chair.
And Tom Yamachika with comments.
Thank you, Chair. We'll stand on our comments. Happy to answer questions.
Members' questions? Seeing none, we'll move on to HB 1047. I'm sorry, HB 1045. First up, we have DOTAX in support.
Thank you, Chair. The Department of Taxation stands on its written testimony in support.
And next up, we have Tax Foundation of Hawaii with comments.
Thank you, Chair. Tom Yamachika from Tax Foundation. We do agree that the amendments appear to be technical and modernizing language.
Excellent. Bear with us, members. Just two more of these. Some housekeeping. Next up, we have 1047, DOTAX in support.
Thank you, Chair. The Department of Taxation stands on its written testimony in support.
And Tax Foundation of Hawaii with comments.
Thank you, Chair. This is not a routine technical cleanup bill. This is a bill that would require biennial relicensing. So instead of just keeping a license around, you would have to renew it every 2 years and pay $20 every time. We got away from that back in I think the 1990s because the tax director at the time, who I worked for, a gentleman named Rick Kale, he thought it was just way too much trouble, and he brought legislation to do away with the annual relicensing of GE license fees that was done at the time, and went to the current $20 lifetime license kind of system. So we're just kind of wondering why the department is kind of flipping its heels after so many years of doing the one license fits all scenario.
Thank you, Tom. That was some interesting history. Members' questions?
Chair, DOTAX?
Please, Rep. Onishi.
Yeah, DOTAX, would you like to explain why this bill?
Yes, thank you, Rep. Onishi. So I guess the biggest difference from this, not this, but these tax types, so for instance, general excise tax, is that we do not get updated information. And one of the biggest pieces of the updated information is an address. So if you look at an income tax return, there's a top space where you put in your taxpayer name, ID, address, and so forth. GE, for instance, GE and all that, TA do not have that, so we often don't get it. And it comes down to updated information. So one of the things is updated addresses. Another reason is to get updated information, for instance, as to who the controlling officers are, officers, members, and so forth. And that there's a compliance link there because we do have personal liability, for instance, for general excise tax. So we kind of want to know who is running the company and what's going on. And so it's kind of similar to what DCCA already does. They already require I think it's an annual registration that they do online, and the fee increases. There's like a late fee if you don't do it on time. I believe the fee is higher. We're not really stuck on the fee more than there just needs to be some mechanism to make the taxpayers do it. And so we're open to any suggestions or discussion regarding that.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Members, questions? Anyone else? Seeing none, we will move on to HB 1048. First up, we have dough tax in support.
Thank you, Chair. The department stands on its written testimony in support.
And Tax Foundation of Hawaii with comments.
Thank you, Chair. We do agree with that these amendments are technical. In large part, they do duplicate what's in HB 1044.
Members, questions? Seeing none, we will move on to HB 1208. First up, we have Chair Alice L. Lee, an individual in opposition. We have the Maui County Mayor's Office in opposition. We have the County of Kauai in opposition. We have Tax Foundation of Hawaii with comments.
Thank you, Chair. Tom Yamachika from Tax Foundation will stand on written testimony.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Sherry Menor McNamara, Chamber of Commerce in opposition. And I believe we have Ken Hiraki of Hawaii Association of Realtors in opposition with us today. Ken, are you there?
Yes, hi. We're strongly opposed to this measure. We believe that this is one of the most ill-conceived measures introduced this session. According to Hero, Hawaii has the worst economy in the country with one of the highest unemployment rates in the nation. Instead of focusing on innovative ideas for economic development, to help us climb out of this hole, this bill will dig us a deeper hole by creating a new double tax on real property. Hawaii was just named the most expensive state to live in the country, and this new tax will only compound the problem. Property taxes are a pass-through tax, will be passed on to renters in the form of higher rent. And this will not only hurt working families and seniors, but also small businesses who are struggling to pay rent as it is. And this will be also cost passed on in the form of higher prices for goods and services and groceries. Higher property taxes also make it more difficult for young families to qualify for home loans. Over the last 3 years, we've seen population decline and many young people cannot afford to live here and they must move to the mainland because of the high cost of living. So some may say, well, this is just a con-am, but we know that this type of measure is highly unpopular. A similar measure a few years ago was polling at 65% against and 35% in favor. Although the Supreme Court struck down the amendment, the question was still on the ballot and lost 238,000 to 103,000 votes. Measures like this are counterproductive and distracting and takes us away from our focus on economic development and working together on innovative ideas to climb out of this hole. We simply cannot afford another tax. Please hold this bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have Alicia Humiston from Rental by Owner Awareness Association in opposition. Next, we have Hawaii State Teachers Association in support. We also have Maui Chamber of Commerce in opposition and an individual, Paul Bernstein, in support. Members' questions.
Can I ask a question of Mr. Yamachita?
Please, Rep. Belay.
So my question, in light of the strong opposition to this, is to maybe ask, what the state is struggling with, what the legislature is struggling with, is the imbalance of the taxation system. And without this kind of constitutional amendment, which is the first step, Mr. Yamachika, how would you suggest that we could rebalance the distribution of taxes between state and county? Because that is a long-standing problem. I think we can all acknowledge that. If not this as a first step, what then?
Well, there are definitely different levers that the state can pull. It already shares with the counties $100 million in transient accommodations tax, although the governor suspended that for the time being. So you need to deal with him on that. There are other grants and aid and other kinds of assistance being given or appropriated to the counties, so you can do that. The Constitution explicitly says you can do that. There are, if you are dealing with ways to balance the budget, you can either raise revenue or cut expenses. That's kind of basic economics. The cutting expenses may be a little tougher to implement, but you got some big departments out there, and some of them probably haven't undergone the kind of scrutiny that you would need to uncover buried treasure. There are also special funds with unused balances that are kind of festering out there. The state auditor has found some of those. There are probably many other ideas, but those are just some.
Thank you. And I think we're looking at all of those, but to handcuff us even on this one, I think is perplexing to me. But thank you for your insights. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Members' questions, Rep. Onishi.
Yes, for the Hawaii Association of Realtors, Ken. Hi, Ken.
Hi.
Thank you for
Hi.
being here.
Thank
I
you.
have a question. Do you have any idea how much of the property in Hawaii is owned by non-residents?
I can get that for you, but when we looked at the purchases from 2019, I believe it was 3% of purchases were from those out of state or foreign.
2019. But
Yeah,
you
but
don't.
I'll get the figures for you.
Okay, okay. So my follow-up question is, of those owners that are not residents of Hawaii, besides the county property tax, and if they are renting their property, the general excise tax, if they're renting it long-term, and the TAT tax and excise tax if they're renting it short-term, what are other contributions that those non-resident property owners contribute to the state?
Well, of course, any income earned is subject to income tax as well. Of course, it all talks about the stability of the real estate market. If you look at, what are some of the, bright spots in the economy, and I think you have to look at the stable real estate market as a bright spot during the whole COVID. Again, it allows families to take loans on the property. Banks are very comfortable and very confident in lending because of the stable real estate prices. We believe that if you look at the construction going on, the quality jobs that are being created, the whole residential real estate market is really an economic driver, and it's one of the few bright spots that we have. I think we have to do our best to maintain what we have and not bring this sector down as well.
So, okay, can you explain then why during this COVID pandemic, the Oahu single-family resident prices jumped $100,000?
Well, I think that was over the last year and a half. But again, it's Hawaii. It's a very safe place to be. What you also saw was a shift from housing from condominiums to single-family homes as people preferred to not live in closed areas. So we actually saw a slight decline in condos as far as sales, but a strong demand for single-family homes. But again, this is not unique to Hawaii. It's national. People want to work from home, and they want to be in a very comfortable environment where they don't have to share common spaces with others as well. So it's not unique to.
How would you categorize Hawaii's property taxes to other states?
Right. So the big difference is that in other states, the property taxes are higher because property taxes are to fund schools and education, and we don't do that. What we have instead is a combination of excise tax, TATs, as well as income tax to pay for education. So if you look at the overall tax package, the cost of living is one of the highest. In fact, we're considered the most expensive state. So you can't look at the property tax in a vacuum. You have to look at it from the total package of how much residents have to pay. And as a result, we are the most taxed state in the country, one of the most taxed states in the country. So you have to look at the overall tax, the cost of living, and not property tax in a vacuum. And again, it's not apples to apples because we don't use property tax for education.
So would you consider that the non-residents' contribution to the state is similar to residents of the state in terms of providing overall support for state and county functions?
But again, they do have to pay their share of taxes as well. And again, if they buy a home and they need to have it renovated, they hire workers, especially during this time, we need construction workers. And they provide for the stability of the real estate market. Again, a strong real estate market is good for this state. It's good for this economy.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Rep. Bellotti has a question.
Thank you. Actually, for Mr. Hiraki.
Oh, sure.
Thank you, Mr. Hiraki. So it's not just schools that real property taxes in other states pay for. Isn't it also public hospital systems, emergency services, a whole slew of things paid for in other states through real property taxes?
Yeah, that's true. Again, the other states would love to have a GET like we do. It's again a very robust tax that other states
Okay,
don't
but
have.
let me pause you right there. I mean, in the same breath, you also said we're the most taxed state, and one of the biggest taxes we have is the GET and the TAT, which makes us one of the most taxed states. So I'm wondering, would the realtors support a measure of the state shifting some of what are traditionally county functions to the county so that we can rebalance it in that way if you don't support this amendment?
Yeah, certainly we have a process in place where we take positions on these type of measures, but I can certainly bring it back to our committee and I can get back to you. I can't personally do that now.
I think it's really important because, right, that's what we're struggling with, the rebalancing or the balancing of how we tax and then what levels of government affect or implement the programs. And quite frankly, there's so much that's shifted to the states that are really county burdens. But thank you, Mr. Hiraki and Chair.
Members' questions? Seeing none, we move on to HB 1209, which is actually a companion measure to HB 1208. They go together like peanut butter and jelly. First up, we have dough tax with comments.
Thank you, Chair. The department stands on its written testimony providing comments.
Next, we have Tax Foundation of Hawaii with comments.
Thank you, Chair. Tom Yamachika from Tax Foundation. One thing I wanted to highlight from my testimony is that the amount of revenue produced by the personal income tax is a very large number. And the bill proposes to basically phase that out and put that on the property tax instead. To do that, you would need a huge increase in the property tax, something of the order of $70 per thousand of assessed valuation. Right now, all of us are paying between like $3 and $5 for residential property, $15 for commercial, depending on what island you live on. So $70 on top of that is going to be a very, very tough nut to crack. After that, I'd love to stand on my testimony and be available for questions.
Thank you very much. And we have Paul Bernstein, an individual in support. Members' questions?
Chair, can I make a comment
Oh, yes, Rep.
or question? And maybe for the other members or testifiers on this Zoom hearing, if you could listen. I mean, maybe the question should be directed to Mr. Yamachika. Hearing what Chair said, that these two bills actually go hand in hand. And hearing that you said that we would have to obviously create this bump in the real property tax, we won't likely see that coming from the counties, and then incomes are obviously processed via state. So knowing that these two bills may go hand in hand, isn't this a potential option to actually provide real relief for property owners who live here, who reside here?
Thank you, Representative. We need to understand that although you may say that the two measures go hand in hand. They're really unrelated. There is no obligation for the legislature to pass or enact House Bill 1209 if the constitutional amendment is enacted, and there is no obligation for any subsequent legislature to stick with it in any time after that. So it can be repealed the next year, it can be repealed the next minute. Any number of things could happen, and this legislature is in no position to, as you put it, hamstring the actions of a subsequent one. So that's what we're afraid of. I hope that answers your question.
Well, I would press this a little bit more. I understand that these things could be unrelated. I think it would take lots of conversation, obviously, coordination of legislation, but to affect this kind of broad change, and if we were able to accomplish that these things could go hand in hand, isn't this a way to actually offer broad tax relief for residents who live and own a single property in the state of Hawaii?
Thank you, Representative. I don't know what you mean by broad relief, because I think by definition, the measure would be either revenue neutral or revenue positive. You would need to take in more money to fill the budget hole that you have. So by definition, if you're relying on the tax system to do that, you're taking more money out of taxpayers' pockets. So I'm not really sure how you could call that broad relief.
Okay, I think we might have some differences in understanding what the mechanics of the bill are, but as this hopefully moves forward, maybe there is more of a conversation to be had. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Yamachika.
Members, any further questions on HB 1209? Seeing none, we move on to HB 1314 relating to taxation. There's a lot in this bill. First up, we have dough tax with comments.
Thank you, Chair. The department stands on this written testimony providing comments.
We have BNF with comments. We have Chair Alice Lee in opposition. Maui County Mayor's Office in opposition. Kauai County Mayor's Office in opposition. Kohala Coast Resort Association in opposition. Tax Foundation of Hawaii with comments.
Thank you, Chair. Tax Foundation of Hawaii will stand in its written comments.
Thank you. And we have Pamela Tumpep from the Maui Chamber of Commerce in opposition. Members, questions? Seeing none, we'll move on to HB 286, the final measure on our agenda today. First up, we have dough tax with comments. Next, we have,
Thank you, Chair. The department stands on its written testimony providing comments.
sorry, there was a lag there, didn't mean to cut you off. Next, we have NAIOP Hawaii with comments. We have Douglas Emmett with comments. We have Faith Action for Community Equity in support. And we have Tax Foundation of Hawaii with comments. Okay. Next, we have Park Hotels and Resorts with comments. Securities Industry Association of Hawaii in opposition. ILWU Local 142 in support. HSTA in support. Narit Hawaii with comments. Imua Alliance in support. Democratic Party of Hawaii Education Caucus in support. Alexander and Baldwin with comments. Trinity United Methodist Church in support. Hawaii Alliance for Progressive Action in support. YDPA in support. A number of individuals in support, and the LGBT caucus of the Democratic Party of Hawaii in support. Members, questions? Seeing none, we will recess for decision making. Welcome back, everybody, for decision making. First up, we have HB 383 relating to a state poker commission. Members, we're going to defer this measure at this time. I think it's a little bit messy and needs some more work. If we were ever going to pass a measure like this, I think it would require some more safeguards. Members, questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, moving on to HB 772 relating to casino gaming in Waikiki. I'm also going to defer this measure. I think we were all at the hearing on last Friday. So members, questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none. Next up is HB 736 relating to sports betting. Now this bill I actually feel a little more comfortable with. I'm still going to defer it, but I think it's something that we really need to look at over time, especially as people's usage habits change. And with the ubiquity of cell phones, I would like to see the state get its fair share of the revenue from all the wagering that is being done by our residents. But I would defer this measure for now. Members, questions?
I just have a comment on this. I'm sad to see this get deferred. There's a number of issues besides revenue, I believe, that come into play here. In a struggling economy where people, as we've seen, close to 300,000 residents here are actually doing sports betting as it is. We have a much more robust fee schedule when it comes to some of the organized online betting. So we typically, for local betting, you have a 20% what they call vigorish fee on it, where nationally that's always been 10%. That's a huge difference for people that do this as recreation. Also, to me, one of the big issues is that the availability of credit for illegal sports betting here versus organized, whether it's online or otherwise sports betting, where if I want to put a $10,000 bet down on a football game, for example, online, I got $10,000 to put up there. If I want to do it locally, I don't need the 10,000. If I win the online bet, I get my 10,000 back plus my winnings. If I do the bet here, if I win the online bet, I get my winnings. I didn't put anything up. If I lose the bet, therein lies the problem, because often the reason I did it locally is because I don't have $10,000. So there's a number of really nasty outcomes that occur in that situation. You can go to Loan Shark, 10% a week, if you want to do that, or there's other less savory outcomes as well. So I think there's a lot of economic pain that occurs because of the illegality of sports betting in particular, but I think for all of the gambling measures we're talking about, it alleviates a lot of the issues with credit being extended to people that can't afford it here. We're in organized gambling that never occurs for financial obvious reasons.
Rep. Kobayashi, you make some excellent points. Thank you very much.
Too much about sports gambling. I've heard about it from people.
Come on, guys, not in front of the prosecuting attorney. They're going to get us. Okay, next up we have HB 1041. We're going to defect the date and pass as is. Members, questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote.
House Bill 1041, Chair's recommendation to pass with amendments. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Representative Valadi.
Aye.
Representative Kobayashi.
Aye.
Representative Onishi.
Aye.
Representative Sayama.
Aye.
Representative Takayama.
Aye.
Representative Okimoto.
Aye.
Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you very much, members. Next up, we have HB 1049. We are going to make some technical amendments, add conforming amendments to 257-10A and 235-4.5D, as well as defecting the date. Members, questions, comments, concerns? Vice Chair for the vote.
House Bill 1049, Chair's recommendation to pass with amendments, though in the presence of all members. Do we have any reservations or no votes? Seeing none, Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you very much, members. Next up, we have HB 1044. We are going to be defecting the date and making technical amendments. Members, questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote.
House Bill 1044, Chair's recommendation to pass with amendments, not in the presence of all members. Do you have any reservations or no votes? Seeing none, Chair, your recommendations adopted.
Thank you very much, members. Next up, we have HB 1045. We will simply be defecting the date. Members, questions, comments, concerns?
House Bill 1045, Chair's recommendation to pass with amendments, note in the presence of all members. Do we have any reservations or no votes? Seeing none, Chair, your recommendations adopted.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have HB 1047. We're making technical amendments and defecting the date. Members, questions, comments, concerns? Vice Chair.
House Bill 1047, Chair's recommendation to pass with amendments, note in the presence of all members. Do we have any reservations or no votes? Chair, your recommendations adopted.
Thank you. Next up, we have HB 1048. We will be making technical amendments and defecting the date. Members, questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, Vice Chair.
House Bill 1048, Chair's recommendation to pass with amendments, note in the presence of all members. Do we have any reservations or no votes? Seeing none, Chair, your recommendations adopted.
Thank you very much, members. Next up, we have HB 1208. We will be defecting the date. Members, questions, comments, concerns? Rep. Kobayashi.
I have a comment on this bill. So a lot of the opposition to this is based on the premise that the property market being strong, a strong property market, which was said, results in a strong economy, good for Hawaii, good for the people of Hawaii. And I think that's one of the premises that we've really taken for granted. I mean, nobody's really ever disproven the null hypothesis here of this being a true statement. So I think what you can look at is a little bit of history where in my lifetime, home went from about $20,000 on the average in Central Honolulu for your average home to that same property being worth about $1 million now. So the idea would be that that's good for the people of Hawaii. I would say that is not. That at that time when houses were $20,000, anybody with a job, any kind of job, owned a home, which I believe is what America is all about. Anybody who wanted to live in Hawaii stayed here. Nobody left for the mainland unless they wanted to, they were interested in living there, had some particular job, personal reason, not because they couldn't afford to live in the home that their family had built for them over generations. So, and it was because of property prices. So we celebrate every time I pick up the newspaper, median prices are up again. Yay, everybody's really happy. It's like, well, for all the people that have to leave here because they can't afford to live here, or people can't ever buy a house, even though they have many people working multiple jobs within the household to pay for it, I'd say that's not good for the people of Hawaii. So I think one of these myths that needs to be challenged is that rising property prices are good for everybody. If we challenged this back in 1960s, we wouldn't be where we are right now. So I would say, on the contrary, rising property prices are the worst thing, and that's what has put us where we are right now. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Rep. Kobayashi. Members, any further questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, Vice Chair.
House Bill 1208, Chair's recommendation to pass with amendments. Not in the presence of all members, do we have any reservations? Do we have any no votes?
No vote, please.
No vote for Representative Okimoto. All others voting aye. Chair, your recommendations adopted.
Thank you very much, members. And next up, we have HB 1209. We will be defecting the date. Members, questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote.
House Bill 1209, Chair's recommendation to pass with amendments. Not in the presence of all members, do we have any reservations or no votes?
No vote, please.
No vote for Representative Okimoto. All others vote aye. Chair, your recommendations adopted.
Thank you, members. Next up, we have HB 1314. We will be making some technical amendments. We have a lot of blank measures. We'll leave them blank, or blank amounts rather, and we'll be defecting the date. Members, questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote.
House Bill 1314, Chair's recommendation to pass with amendments. Not in the presence of all members, do you have any reservations or no votes?
No vote, please.
No vote for Representative Okimoto. All others vote aye. Chair, your recommendations adopted.
Members, thank you very much. Last measure today, HB 286. we'll make some technical amendments, and we're going to change the language at the end of the bill. Instead of saying the particular REIT shall, we're going to change the language to the Department of Taxation may require. So it is simply enabling language for no tax. Members, questions, comments, concerns?
I have a question, Chair.
Vice Chair.
What about the department's testimony where they say that REITs are already required to designate themselves? Are we gonna be removing the requirement from the bill?
No.
Okay.
Rep. Kobayashi.
Thank you, Chair. Again, there's certain arguments made in opposition to taxing REITs that are just taken as good coin that I think need to be questioned and challenged a little bit. This bill was passed in the last session and it was vetoed, and the reason given was that it would discourage investment. Now, and I think for a lot of people, they hear that and go, oh, yeah, okay, investment is good, so we need to encourage it. Well, I think in the context of what we're looking at here with REITs investing in commercial property or residential property for those REITs here in the state of Hawaii, is it really good to say that the greater the investment, the greater the benefit to the people of Hawaii? So if you could take an example for one of our more, we take a large shopping center here. Say REITs are more reluctant to make the investment to purchase that if it comes up for sale because we passed this legislation. I believe there are many non-REITs that would jump in and buy, say, Almona Shopping Center. It would not go there with no bid for it. So to say that REITs are the only buyers of large commercial properties is really a folly. And to say that when that shopping center does go up for sale, to have the greatest investment, the most bidders putting the highest price there is to the benefit of the people of Hawaii, can't possibly be true. The less is paid, the less the rent will be, the less the prices will be, the merchants, people of Hawaii. So from a trickle-down effect, greater investment results in greater prices for the consumers of Hawaii. And I don't believe that's a good thing, particularly right now. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Rep. Kobayashi. Members, further questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, Vice Chair.
House Bill 286, Chair's recommendation to pass with amendments. So in the presence of all members, do you have any reservations or no votes? Seeing none, Chair's recommendation is adopted.
Thank you very much, members.